As a first-year student in San Francisco State's creative writing program. Born and raised in Austin, Texas, where she continues to draw, which is a place that she continues to draw inspiration from for her stories and novels. She graduated with honors in English from Swarthmore College, where she wrote and edited for The Phoenix. She lives in the Mission. Loria, everybody. Loria's welcome her. Close to the mic.
Dude, this thing is drenched in wine.
Oh, that's how we do it.
That's VelRo. Hello.
Okay, so I have two pieces. One that's kind of short. The other one's fairly short. I'll just stop reading the second one when there's a general consensus of shut the fuck up reading. Alright, cool.
Shut the fuck up.
This first one is called Staring at Dead Flies. I've always liked the look of something dead. When I was 8 years old, I threw my pet rat outside during a snowstorm because I wanted to find it dead in the ice. My parents found it alive and lectured me. One of its paws had turned black and fell off within a week. The rodent stump drummed loudly against the plastic cage with every step. I do not remember how it finally died. I was too overwrought with the silence. The next fall, someone I loved died. I never saw the body. It never seemed real. I've often thought about the bones and what it would be like to dig them up, to smash a clavicle against rock and feel it break in my hands, to hold the skull to my ear and listen to the ocean, to sniff the foot bones, to lick the dirt right off the canines. The day of the funeral, they wrapped me in the blanket my someone died in, and when I cried because I was afraid of touching what a dead person had touched, my mother told me, "Hush, what is dead cannot hurt you." She does not believe in ghosts. Still, I wonder about the dead and their phantom limbs. Do they feel my gaze the way I feel yours now? Or is it like words on a page, dead until read? When I was little, I would try and catch myself in the mirror with my eyes closed, wondering what I would look like dead. I never could do it, though I tried to convince myself that I had, and that I was a beautiful corpse. I saw a girl face down in the road, scrunched up around the neck like a caterpillar. She had flown from a car window 20 feet away. The traffic was at a standstill. I was not the only one looking. I do not know what the others were thinking about. I thought about her perfect blonde curls, how the person she curled them for would never see how beautiful they were. Crisp, shoulder-length, 2.5-inch spirals, Garnier 32, vanilla fizz. Those locks fell over the sides of her face and covered the splits where her brains fell out and made a mess of the road. She was a beautiful corpse. I dream of the people, places, and relationships that have died during my lifetime. They're the old, and more often they're the new. I don't have the heart to tell them the truth. Even a lucid dreamer cannot bring back the dead. Try it sometime. You'll see I'm right. Sometimes I feel I am about to die, but I have stopped looking for it in the mirror. When I am afraid, I go to my kitchen windowsill and stare at all the dead flies there. Most lie on their backs, bloodless and shriveled. They are not flies at all. I tell them I am not afraid of dead things, and laugh. My breath sends them scattering across the sill, and then they are still again. When I read that to my boyfriend last night, he was like, "That's horrible." So fun. Alright, and this next piece. Yeah, what does he know that?
You're like, that's horrible. Like,
You're horrible. Dead on Sundays when you have to get up early the next day. Alright, so this next piece is called Something Divine, and it's freaking got out of control. So I'm just gonna read until I feel like stopping. Right. For good luck, Huckstein flipped a nickel to the town tramp sitting in a piss pot at the end of Tarnish Road. Blisters of psoriasis peeled from the pleats in the tramp's skin and fell to the ground, where they were snapped up by pigeons and grackles who would later shit his own flesh back onto him. Yet Huck liked him. He liked the tramp the way a ship's captain might like an old lighthouse. For the tramp, however abandoned when the weather was fair, was always there to let Huck know where and who he was. Everyone in Tarnish knew the tramp, for come rain or shine, he had sat in his spot since anyone could remember. But to ask for his name so late in the game would have been ill-mannered, so no one ever had, for they felt someone really ought to one of these days. All in Tarnish felt a weight lift from their shoulders when one winter, the old man fell ill with some divine affliction. For with his swollen tongue always stuck out stiff, no one could understand a thing he said, and they were finally off the hook. And though he was sore to look at, the tramp was so old and bony and diseased that the only reckoning they could reckon for his longevity was divinity, for who knew what form Christ would take upon his return. So rather than run him out of town as they had with the others, the mayor decided to do the Christian thing and made their could-be Messiah the county light marker and paid him $3 a month to hold a sign that said, "Welcome to Tarnish, a nice place to live." Tarnish Road was the only road in Tarnish County and turned into North Cross Highway just after you passed Martinez Taxidermy and Barbecue. I really saw a place like that in Texas once. Senor Martinez and Junior ran the sloth and stuff, while Miss Martinez, a pale Spanish woman as jumbo curved and red in the face as the sausages she slung, ran the adjoining lunch pit. Huck thought the brisket sandwiches were good, but the water tasted like formaldehyde and the tea not much better no matter how much sugar you added. He never understood why they never opened the doors or windows on triple-digit days like today, for it was unbearable to sit inside and the meat spoiled twice as fast. But Miss Martinez had told him how one night she had forgotten to lock the windows, and the Lipscomb twins snuck in and sacked the place with all their arsenic and 50 pounds of meat. "You can't trust anyone these days," Miss Martinez had said. And while Huck agreed with her that it was getting harder and harder to love their neighbor, he didn't understand why they couldn't at least leave the windows cracked for a fucking hour at lunch. He tipped his hat to the sweaty woman as he passed, and her neck meat peeled coyly from her gluttonous breast as she waved him with a fat fistful of sweetbreads. Huck passed under the Martinez Men's Business sign, a pine cut out of a woman's nude silhouette with the head of a buck. The second coat of paint was sun-faded enough so one could just make out the original black lettering. Martinez Brothers Taxidermy from before Geraldo's heart had bled out from a feverish tick bite. But Martinez Place, like the rest of Tarnish, was said to have seen better days, but Huck didn't know anything about that. His memory was ahistorical. He only remembered facts insofar as their relevance to his personal affairs, of which there were few. The only door to Martinez Brothers Taxidermy was worked so badly that anyone who wanted in had to really want in. Huck knew the ritual. He banged on the wood so hard that splinters peeled away with his fist, for the Martinez men were practically deaf and nearly always signed lustily through some limmer's skull in the back room. He waited for Junior to come to the front and yelled, "Okay!" Then Huck yelled, "Okay!" And Junior peeled as Huck heaved with every ounce of himself until the door finally gave. And even then it only scraped open a few inches so Huck could just barely squeeze his fat gut through the frame. "Hey, Huck, the old man just finished turning her up." Junior, a short man with horse nostrils who looked more and more like his father the closer he got to 40, shut and locked the door. Huck nodded his head and rubbed his gut in a clockwise position, trying to put everything back into place. "Lo siento, Huck. You keep telling the old man we ought to get a new one, but you know how it goes. He always says let's get around to fixing it himself. Thinks one day he'll wake up young again, pinche viejo basón." Junior continued to curse his father even when the old man had entered the room from another door and back, but Junior could not hear him coming, and Senor Martinez smiled as he approached, for he could not hear his son cursing him bilingually without reserve. The old man was wiping his head on a soiled linen rag and smiling so wide Huck could count every crack of his rotting black teeth. "How you today, Senor Martinez shouted. You know." Huck rocked back on his heels, looking around the workshop restlessly. All of the glassy eyes staring back at him seemed not injudicious, tinted by the sour yellow walls, and he became aware of a feeling he always had in Sunday service, of being watched, waited, and judged. He could only blink at the long-toothed bats hanging from the ceiling over cloven-foot umbrella stands, holding the rattlesnake whips and horn canes. In the middle of the room stood a thin, flat table made of deer legs with an assortment of lucky muskrat paws, first-foot boutonnieres, and back-heel buttons, which are penis bones, all lit up by a single yellow bulb and a possum's mouth hanging above Huck's head. The display was modest in comparison to the turtle squirrels, pigeon pigs, and ratfish that Junior had shown Huck one night after a bout of drinking so toxic only a bachelor could survive. The front showroom was swept and wiped down the waiting room of sorts with a distinct air of idleness. The Martinez men specialized in hybrid taxidermy, and it was only in the back room that they allowed themselves to truly flourish as creators. "Wait here, eh?" Senor Martinez held his hands up and went to the back room, careful not to open the door wide enough for Huck to see what waited for him inside. Huck looked to Junior in an attempt to break the silence, but Junior only smiled and winked. Huck felt his eyes drawn to the tick bite hawking Junior's neck, and finding that it made his mouth water unpleasantly, tried to find something else in the room to fix his gaze upon. He chose the blood spatter on the popcorn ceiling from the days before they had fully segregated the slaughter room from the skinning room. There seemed to be some sort of growth upon this thing, a second coming of life. Huck jumped in his boots when the door finally kicked open and Senor walked in carrying the body. Huck could not help but wonder at the sight. Senor smiled then, for he knew he had created something divine. "You like, eh?" Hank reached out his hand. "May I?" Senor Martinez smiled and flourished towards the specimen. Huck bent down and ran his thick fingers through the beast's feathered wingspan and down the coarse black fur of the hind legs. He clawed his hand and took a tenacious whiff of his fingers. The smell of grain and dirt and mammalian lard filled his nostrils, giving him a farmer's buzz. There seemed to be something thorough about her, nothing synthetic or sanitary. The beast crouched back in a humble stalk, balancing on 2 front claws and 2 back paws. Examining it as close as he was, Huck was impressed by the Martinez men's artistry, for there were no visible seams in the joining of mammal and avian flesh. Every red and black feather was in place in the wings and torso, which were perfectly mounted to the headless hound. The Vaz people seemed to follow him keenly wherever he went. Senor had done wonderfully. Looking at her, you would never guess that it had been violence that merged the 2 beasts' fate, and Huck hoped he too would forget. He was overcome by a sudden knot of relief in his throat, and feeling the rims of his eyes dehydrate, blinked stupidly to keep from crying. He knelt before his lady and kissed her beak, so gracefully reattached to her skull that Huck thought God himself could have done it. He thanked the Martinez men, who had watched the reunion joyfully. They told him they would deliver it later, afternoon, in their truck, and Huck left him there whistling in good spirits. I'll stop there, because it gets really fucked up. But thank you.